Hey, Mama Bears and some of our Papa Bears. Welcome to the end of year wrap up, where we just kind of talk about all the things that happened this year and just what we've been doing with Mama Bear, where we've been, where we're going, and just we're just going to say it's been a year, friends. It has been a year. So, let's talk all about it. So, Lindsay, you're going to be our MC for today. You're going to be interviewing me and Amy. And of course, I'm probably going to sneak some questions into you as well. But yes, so you're not getting off the hook. So, what are some of the things that people are wondering for our end of year wrap up?
I think that the number one question that people have on their minds, Hill, is how are you doing? For those of you who don't know, or maybe you're new to Mama Bear, and you're not familiar with things that have been happening with Mama Bear, Hillary had a pretty major medical diagnosis happen earlier in the spring and had a major surgery in May. And it has required a lot of recovery, and we're still recovering.
Yes.
So, Hill, can you fill us in on what that process has been like for you?
So just for giggles, I would love people to Google what a Whipple procedure is so you can see.
No, I don't think
I'm going to pass on that one.
That's because y'all know what it is. So if you want to, well, if you're curious like me, if you're like one of those people that watch Pimple Popper and they're just curious about all these weird, bizarre medical stuff, it had nothing to do with Pimple Popper. It was all about rearranging everything in my intestines. Anyway, so apparently I'm now on a Whipple Warrior Survivor page support group. And so everybody celebrates their Whippleversary. So my Whippleversary from now on will be 5/20 Whippleversary Day. And that's the day you got whipped. So that's just the insider lingo for you.
Tell us, so your intestines got moved around, but what does that mean exactly?
Okay, so they found a tumor, which did turn out to be non-cancerous, even though all the doctors said it was cancerous because it was growing through all 4 layers of intestine and spreading. But it was really near, it was on the intestine, really near where the pancreas connects. So because of the location, they had to remove part of the pancreas. They had to remove that whole connecting part of the intestines, which is called the jejunum. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the duodenum. People pronounce it differently. Because you have your liver and your gallbladder things that go into there, you have to remove the gallbladder. And then also, and I don't totally understand why, but part of the stomach. And then it's all kind of pieced together in a way that when you look at it, it sort of looks like Frankenstein. And it's like, there's no way this is going to work the same. And guess what? It totally doesn't. It's been very weird. But they say I'm supposed to measure my recovery in years, not in months. It's like I'll see month to month recovery. It's very, very small, but usually 2 years plus is when you start feeling normal again. So I have been learning on an extreme level how to have grace with myself and do what I need to do and rest when I need to rest. And I think this is a lesson the Lord has tried to teach me for most of my adult life. And to say that he's finally gotten my attention for the last time, hopefully, I would say, yes, I have learned this lesson. Please, please, Lord, don't make me learn this again. I will be a good girl this time. So I'm doing better. I have, John and I have named it. It's high tide and low tide days. The high tide days are where I can actually have energy. I sometimes have a little coffee to kind of boost myself. And then the low tide days, I basically sleep for 17 hours and can't do anything. And so sometimes that's 4 days a week. Sometimes it's only once a week. But we just let it be when it's going to be. And I'm just, praying that I don't have a crash day, which that's the low tide we also call crash days. I'm praying that I don't have a crash day on any of my speaking engagements because we've got a lot of great events that are coming up this year. So that'll be an experiment. And so we shall see, but that is how I am doing. I have not gotten a hernia yet. I asked people specifically to pray for that. I've just had such amazing prayer warriors. So I'm really thankful for all that, but that's how I'm doing now.
Great. Amy and I have watched you through this process, and I think both of us can say you've handled this really well. It's not been an easy situation for you at all. And Amy and I have just watched you handle it beautifully. And you have hard days. those days aren't beautiful, and we can admit that, right? But at the same time, you've done it, right?
Yeah.
We've gotten through the last 6 months.
Mhm.
And it also hasn't been all bad because, and this is Amy, I would love to hear your perspective on this. You wrote a book this year and pushed it out, and it has been amazing. So Amy, tell me about writing a book. This was your first book, right? And so tell me all about it. I want to know all about it.
Yeah. So it's one of those things, like ever since I was a little kid, that's what I wanted to do. So outside of chasing tornadoes, writing a book was what I wanted to do. I mean,
she's serious when she says that was her first goal, was chasing tornadoes.
It genuinely was. Like, I think it's our very first podcast. We had like a 15-minute discussion over why this was a life goal of mine. But yeah. And so to be able to do that was really neat. It was definitely one of those situations to where you go into it a little bit with rose-colored glasses, and then you come out the other side and you're a little haggard, but you're like, man, we did it.
Yeah,
we survived.
Queued up, spit out, kind of have a twitch at this point.
Exactly. You know, you have all these grand ideas of what it's going to be like, and it's like, okay, well, things might be a little different, but no, it was really great. And what I really appreciate is all the research that went involved with it. We got to learn so much, and it wasn't. I think it broadened empathy as well and compassion. Because when you just look at something from a surface level, from just looking at the subject, it's very clinical. It's just very impersonal. And then to be able to dive in and encounter so many personal stories and hear so many witnesses and see so much regeneration from Christ, it really puts everything in perspective. I think it levels the playing field too, because so often it's easy for us as Christians to be like, well, you know, kind of like the Pharisees, right? At least I'm not that.
At least I'm not that. We always compare, as long as we're above somebody, then we're doing okay for some reason.
Doing okay. And it was one of those great things to be able to look and see, man, we are really meant in ministry just to be walking alongside and shouldering each other's burdens and encouraging one another while pointing each other back to truth. It really put it all in perspective. Yeah. So it was a really neat process. There were some really great moments of, you know, just being able to, I even think of our week away, Hillary, when we woke up, I think it was our last morning and there was snow. I mean, that was just like little kid moment, and just being able to write and to grow closer to the Lord, and even just funny moments too of my, so you know how those kids stores, children's place and things, like the pajamas for the whole family? Mm-hmm. Well, my mom last year, she bought everybody these, I call it a slanket, but it's one piece fleece onesie that had this hood that flipped up with antlers. And it was like the most unattractive thing possible. And I made fun of it so badly until I put it on, and I'm like, this is so cozy. And I would there were so many nights where I would be up all night writing, researching. My kids would wake up in the morning and I'd have like a half-eaten box of Cheez-Its, and I'd be in my slanket and everything. And they're just like, wow, mommy, you're really working hard. So it was so great in these sort of very unattractive writing moments where you spent 3 days living in this fleece blanket that's been turned into an outfit, just fisting Cheez-Its and tea. You know, it was just part of the process that I never expected when it came to writing. But
you have special pants too, right?
I live in fleece everything during the winter. Up here where it's cold, I've got a couple of different onesies, and then I've got fleece pants on right now. And I remember when I first started wearing fleece pants, I was a teacher in Dallas, and I remember every day on my way home from work, I was like, I get to put on fleece pants. And it was like just this thing that brought me joy. And so now all the neighbors know me. Usually, because I'll take walks around the neighborhood and I always have the fleece pants on. And I think one of my friend's kids was like, wow, you're wearing normal clothes this one day. So yes, I'd like to think that I had a little bit of an influence on Amy there. And I'd also like to think I had a bad influence on you with the Cheez-Its. So true story, I gained 7 pounds over our writing retreat just on those 2 family boxes of Cheez-Its that I inhaled. So apparently those are my kryptonite, and that did not come off easily.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Wow. Okay. So
did we thank Cheez-Its in our acknowledgements?
I know.
No.
I feel like we should have, because they were part of the process.
That's funny. So Amy described some of her favorite moments. Hill, what were some of your favorite moments in the book writing process?
In the book writing process.
You have to look at the bright side because
Okay,
I
let's
think-
look at the bright side. I would say it was the times there was this one time when I was really close to the deadline and I knew something was missing in this manuscript and I couldn't put my finger on it. But I just knew. And then I read this book by Christopher West. And all of a sudden it was just this aha. And so I thought I was going to have to do all these massive rewrites, but I was able to go in there and really integrate his stuff all throughout the book. And I was like, now we're cooking here. So that was a really good moment.
Awesome.
But I would say also the week with Amy, where we just went away and we wrote and we did stupid workouts to that 7-minute workout thing and the brainstorming and just, I don't know, the process of going, I think, from fear to empowerment for this book, especially for me, that I started out really fearful with this book, just because I wanted, how am I going to say something that hasn't been said a million times before? How am I going to say it in a way that's going to make sense and that's like actually brings in the aha moments? It's like everybody focuses on just what the Bible says, but why? Why is that? And thank God for Pope John Paul II, who has this giant, like 800-page tome on the theology of the body, which Christopher West distills down. And so I feel like we were able to offer something that isn't currently out there. And so I think my favorite part was probably the launch team. I was like in this big stress ball up until the launch team when I could start getting people's feedback on it. And I think one of my favorite compliments in there. So chapter 12 and 13, 12 is Amy's chapter on purity culture. Chapter 13 is taking up your sexual cross. And it just talks about how we all have kind of a sexual cross that we're called to carry, that we're called to be faithful in. And one of the ladies on our launch team said, these 2 chapters did for me what 20 years of counseling couldn't. And that to me, I was like, the book could bomb and I'll still be happy because there's this one person who we've tangibly changed her life in this area. Because I think there's so much shame and just bondage are surrounding these topics. So yeah.
So the book hasn't bombed.
No, it hasn't bombed.
Well received. And I don't know numbers, but we don't really spend a lot of time focusing on numbers.
Yeah.
But the response from people on social media and emails, I did hear that one.
Okay, thank you.
And other places has been overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
And it's been somewhat of a relief, I think, for the whole team that has been the general response. But also, so the publisher wasn't caught off guard. And I think the people weren't really caught off guard because they were really expecting this kind of book from us. And so the response has been great. What's happening related to the book right now? Are we doing a study guide?
Yes, I am finishing up the study guide. That's got, so the study guide is going to be special. So there was so much that we had to cram into this book that I didn't get as many discipleship opportunities that I wanted. Like we had, I think, a little bit more in the first book. So we are doing the very first ever study and discipleship guide. It might just be called a discipleship guide, but throughout the whole thing, it has these little moments, like 2 or 3 of them per chapter of discipleship opportunity to how do you reinforce these concepts with your kids in a more concrete way to where they can kind of draw an analogy and then bring it over into the topics of sexuality or holiness or worship and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see what people think about the study guide.
Great. And one question we get a lot is about the audiobook.
Yes.
What's happening with the audiobook?
Yes. So it was supposed to be out November 30th. One of the days I was supposed to record, my voice was all scratchy. So we had to nix that day, but then it made it to where we couldn't schedule another one for like a month. And so it is fine. It is finished being recorded. And I believe January 13th is now the new release date. And for all the people who would like a little special bonus for, reason why to buy the audiobook, something that I noticed as I was reading the audiobook is I think my accent changes depending on the chapter, depending on who was driving with me over to this to the studio. And here's where a story gets real. The very last recording I did, which would end up being chapter 12, the purity chapter, taking up your sexual cross, the maxims chapter or afterward, and then just all the at the end stuff. I had meant to take something that was an antacid, and there was a pain pill that's the exact same shape next to it. I accidentally took the pain pill. So I'm like driving to this place going, what is wrong with me? I'm like slapping myself in the face. And I finally realized what was wrong. And I got there and I was like slurring my words. And I said, this is where we discover if I'm just a reader or if I'm an actress. And so I was like, you need to play how I sounded before. And so I had to imitate how I sounded when I was actually sounding normal. So you're going to probably hear the California accent at some point, the Texan accent at some point. I have a strong Midwest accent the days that I drove with my friend Katie, and possibly a little slurring, and who knows what I sound like for that last recording. So just those are like the little Easter eggs if you want to listen for them in that book. That's just going to make it a fun listen to see if you can tell who was I driving with the day that we recorded.
Well, I'm looking forward to it now. I'm going to have to download it to make sure that I can guess. Days are.
I'm really interested because I so remember the days with Katie, and I was saying stuff, and it wasn't like as obvious as the about stuff, but there was a bunch of
a northern accent right now.
I'm not mocking. I'm trying to imitate it, and the fact that I'm so bad at it means I'm mocking. No, but there was this certain vowel that I kept saying, and I was in the back of my head. I was like, "That sounds Midwestern. That sounds Midwestern," and I was trying to actively change it. And it's just because I pick up on everybody's dialect when I'm around them. I'll start talk. John can tell when I've been watching British TV because I start picking up on it.
I've been praying that my kids pick up a British accent. The more that I watch Great British Bake Off, I'm like, please, Lord, let them have a British. They don't. And
they're just missionaries in England.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And I have a northern accent, so my accent comes out when I'm.
See, it comes out.
Yeah, I heard that out. Yeah.
So I'm not. There's nothing to be said against accents because I'm not one.
It makes it sound special.
It does. Okay, so we did more than just write a book. I just write a book. That sounds terrible. We did more than just write a book this year. There were some podcasts and some blogs that came out as well. And so, do y'all have a favorite blog or podcast that came out this year? Do you even remember what we did this year?
My brain is basically the years divided into two things, or actually three times. Scrambling to write the book and writing like 50 hours a week and not sleeping and being hyped up on coffee, getting my diagnosis and then trying not to die and being in pain for a long time. And then when all the interviews started, and Amy can tell you how out of it I was because she's like, yeah, remember that interview we did yesterday? I'm like, we did an interview yesterday. I had no memory of it. And like, so all the days blurred together. So that's kind of the blur of 2021 for me. So I'm going to pass this one off to Amy because she was probably more, maybe my brain's just trying to forget this year in general. It was a rough year.
Yeah, I would have to say there's a couple moments. So I don't know. Have we released the one with Gail that we were talking about, the importance of mentors? Oh my God. Okay, y'all. So
in January.
January. Okay. So you got to stay tuned for that. It happened in this year. So that's why I can talk about it.
Yeah.
That was probably the most fun interview that doing this year, and just discussing the need for mentors and how to foster mentorship with adults that aren't you for your kiddos. Now, her ministry is primarily girls based, teen girls and that sort. So we were, that was kind of more like we were focused on mentors for girls, but we also referenced the importance of boys too. And it really transcends. It doesn't matter if you have a boy or a girl.
Yeah.
And so that one's coming in January. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Kind of a funny moment. I felt so bad about this one. Monique Duson, we had her come on talking about college.
I know what you were going to say.
It was so great. The problem was I forgot about time zones. So we're Central, she's Pacific because they're in California. And so I think I scheduled it for like 10:30 or whatever. Well, it was like 8:30 her time. I felt so bad. She gets on there. I'm like, hey, Monique, how are you doing? She's like, well, we instituted a new policy. We're calling it the Mama Bear policy. And I'm like, oh Lord, what did we do? And it's because she was just like struggling to wake up. She had, I think in her cup, it wasn't even coffee. It was like hot water. Like she didn't even have time to do coffee. And so we now, for poor Monique, she has a new mama bear policy thanks to my poor scheduling and not being sensitive to time zones.
Don't say we never give them anything.
Never do any podcast for anybody, not just mama bears, but
Yes.
any podcast before 11 Pacific time for theirs. I think is how the policy went. So yeah, Gail's was fantastic. Monique's, that one was just funny. And
I do remember doing the ones. So we also did. So we've got a lot of podcasts to release. So like in January, it's like we said, it's been a year. So I do an interview with Monica Klein, who is an endorser for the book
tomorrow.
Oh, it is. Yay. Okay, good.
You can talk about it as though we've already released it.
Okay. So we totally just released this podcast. But Monica is a former Planned Parenthood sex education trainer. So she learned under Planned Parenthood, and then she taught the people at Planned Parenthood, and she went around giving talks to different inner city places or just youth clubs and stuff on comprehensive sex education. And when some of the questions that she came to the realization, we are not doing these kids any favors. And through just a series of events, the Lord got a hold of her. But the stories, these heartbreaking stories she has of when she was doing comprehensive sex education training, and the stuff that the Planned Parenthood people would say, about like really not caring if girls were being trafficked. Their motto was like, well, if she's not doing it with him, she'll be doing it with someone else next week. And so they just didn't report anyone. So anyway, it's a real, we'll call it an expose for that one. And then of course, super excited that Amy and I got to interview one of the guys from Babylon Bee. And we talked about the importance of humor in apologetics and evangelism. So I think that one, Jeremiah said that he enjoyed editing that one. So I think that one's going to be good.
Great. Yeah, that'll probably come out in January as well.
Okay.
So I think that's what the schedule says.
Awesome.
I had two favorite blogs, and they were both written by Amy. I really liked the one where she talked about her son and the Twitter thing.
That was so crazy.
I think it was titled "Why People Are Mad That Your Child is a Christian," and it was. I watched it real time when it was happening on Twitter. And so I remember like the anxiety of experiencing that and then having you reflect on it so beautifully.
Yeah.
It's definitely one that I think parents should read because it helps with the confidence of, okay, what can my kid encounter and how do we address those things that they're encountering because of their faith? The other one was because I'm a mom of 3 daughters. Amy wrote a beautiful blog called Biblical Women Every Girl Should Know. And I think that one was super well received by our audiences. But she talks about some women in the Bible that can inspire our daughters. And as you may know, there aren't a lot of inspiring women in culture today that we can point our children to.
Inspiring, yes. In the good way, maybe not.
Yeah, that are good influences on our
yes.
kids. And so it was really refreshing to read a mom of boys' perspective on biblical women that our girls should know. So if you haven't read that yet, we'll have a link in the description below to both of those blogs and to the podcasts if they've been released that were just mentioned. I guess that kind of wraps up 2021. Do you have anything else you want to say about 2021 before we move on to 2022?
Don't let the door hit you or the good Lord split you.
Yeah. See ya.
Yeah.
Okay. So
we're so sad you're going. Okay, then next on to the next.
So 2022 has some exciting things we're thinking about. Hillary, what is the word we're going toward there for this year?
For this year, the Mama Bear's word, which is different than my own personal word. The word for Mama Bear is consistency. Yes. And Amy is, I mean, Lindsay's getting all excited about this because this is like, her love language. And so we are going to be aiming to, so what are our goals for consistency, Lindsay?
Yeah. So one of the things we realized when Hillary got sick, but also when the first book was released and now the second book has been released, that it's been really hard for us to stay on a consistent schedule with the podcasts and the blogs.
Mhm.
But frankly, those two things are our first loves with Mama Bear. And we know, especially with the podcasts, that that's what you all look forward to.
Mhm.
And so this year in 2022, we're really focusing on making sure that we're coming out with podcasts and blogs consistently.
Yes.
And that will mean, hopefully, and you can hold us accountable for this now that we've
Yes.
said it out loud, that we're going to shoot for 2 blogs a month and 2 podcasts a month as well. And so you'll start to see that structure actually happen this month if you haven't already noticed it already.
Mhm.
And that'll lead us into 2022 as well.
Yep.
But we're really excited about being able to do that. Another thing that you'll start to see more consistently is we are bringing back the audio apologetics blog. And we're so thrilled to be able to do that for you.
Won't you remind them what that is? Because it's been a hot second since we've had some of those.
Been a while. So if you're not familiar with the AAB, what it is we either read one of our own articles, or we read an article that is popular, that is relevant to what we address here at Mama Bear, that maybe you don't have time to sit down and read yourself. So our beautiful team member, Robin, who has a most amazing voice,
Yes.
will read that to you. And usually those take about 10 minutes. So you can just pop those on and listen to the article be read to you instead of sitting down and having to read it. Busy moms, busy dads, busy lifestyles. And this gives you the opportunity to keep up to date on some of those things that you might just not be able to put in your busy schedule. Anything else that we're thinking about for 2022?
Well, we are writing another book, but this is going to be cathartic book because I've had 2 really stressful books. And especially after this last one, I'll just be honest, that last book was really hard on me. The kind of material I was having to read and sift through. And it just... It was a bear, and my body absorbed all the stress. And so we need something cathartic. And so I'm not going to say exactly what it is, but it's going to be something that's just going to be like a breath of fresh air. And so it'll be one of those things where we can be writing a book, but it's not so research focused that we can't work towards our consistency for 2022.
Great. Yeah, I think that we've also got lots of topics we're thinking about addressing, but we'd love to hear from you. If you have ideas about what you'd like us to talk about, either on the podcast or the blog, you can always send us those requests either in the comments below, or you can send us an email, or whatever. You hit us up on the socials. We're everywhere on the socials except for TikTok.
Yes,
we have Drawn the Line,
a dark hole that we don't want to go down.
And nobody really wants to see us try to do like the dances and the funny things.
I don't know.
I you just stand there. Oh man, it kills me how people will just okay, because I've seen TikTok, right? I don't have the app, but it's like people will stand there and they just like point to things that are like flashing above their heads, and I'm like, I am sorry, nobody wants to look at me for that long while I always point. I mean, like this is just not something I'm good at. I mean, unless we can be weird with it and just be like, it's just not, it's not a thing.
Yeah. See, I like watching the dances, so I'm like, that would be a time sucker for me. And so I just don't need anything else that sucks my time.
Yeah. And I'm not going to put it on my phone. I don't have any socials on my phone. So adding TikTok is like way out. That's not going to happen. But that's about all that we're looking forward to in 2022. The thing about planning for a year best laid plans, right? So we always have these plans that we start the year off with, and there's a wrench that happens, and that could be a good wrench or a bad wrench. We don't know. And so one of the things that we as a team are committed to is following the Holy Spirit and listening to him.
Yes.
And when he tells us to go a certain direction, we'll go, even if it is against what our original plans were. And so we constantly try to remain vigilant and discerning of what God is telling us to do. But again, please tell us your ideas, because we do love ideas. Sometimes we get in a rut because we're like, well, I really like this topic and I want to talk about this topic 100% of the time.
Let's do a 6-week series on it.
And maybe that's not something you're interested in, or we haven't talked about something you're interested in.
Or not something that your family is currently struggling with, because it could just be beyond interest of like, my kid keeps asking about this and I have no idea what to say.
Yeah. So I think that pretty much does it for this podcast. And we just want to take a moment to tell you how grateful we are for your commitment to Mama Bear and all of the support that you've shown us as a team, but also Hillary this year. I know that your prayers and well wishes were one of those things that really helped her hold it together. And so maybe she wants to mention something, but I'll close by saying just from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. We hope that you had an amazing Christmas and that you'll have a great new year. And that 2022 really is a time for you to grow in Christ and grow your family in Christ. And be a witness to the world.
Yeah. And I just also want to just emphasize that we are a donation supported ministry. And so there's money that I put into the ministry from the books that we do, but a lot of the money that we do raise is from support. So if you really appreciate what we're doing, we pray that you would consider partnering with us just in a financial way. Or if there's anything else that you're saying, that you're like, I would really love to serve you in this way, that you would reach out, because as Lindsay was saying, sometimes we're such a small team that when we're in the midst of writing a book, sometimes other things kind of get dropped by the wayside because we're just not big enough to be able to keep up with all this stuff. And so we would like to be able to hire new team members, and we would like to be able to pay them a fair wage, which right now several of our team members I don't think are getting a fair wage, but they do this because they love doing it. So just ask the Lord if he puts anything on your heart to contribute to Mama Bear, and we gratefully accept it, and we will continue to be faithful with the tasks that he's given us. But we could use partners as well. So thank you so much for your prayers. Thank you so much for those who have donated to the ministry. Y'all just really make all the difference in the world. To God be the glory through everything. And here's to 2022. Hopefully better than 2021.
Amy, do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to say?
God, I just am thankful to everyone there who were just so encouraging and so gracious to us. We truly love having fellowship with you, and we love being able to minister. And so many of you we've even been able to connect with just on Facebook Messenger and just be able to speak into situations in your lives. And we're so grateful to be able to have the opportunity to do that. So for everyone who's just reached out, who's just had that bit of fellowship with us, we're so grateful to you, because that's the whole reason we're here, is to shine God's light and to build each other up. So thank you so much for just your continued involvement with Mama Bear.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, be blessed, people, and we will see you in the new year.
See you in the new year.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, and Happy New Year.